my pleasure to welcome you to our February 4th Charleston County Transportation Sales Tax Session Committee retreat. I'm also honored to have so many members of the public here, and also our three mayors and many of their council members to be here today. Thank you all for your participation and being here with us today. Before we dive in, I want to emphasize a few key points about how we got here and what this day represents. Today's presentation reflects a rigorous and inclusive outreach process spanning multiple months. Our staff and consultants have worked hard at gathering input from the public, priorities from the municipalities, and data from the DCD COG to ensure their recommendations represented an objective and well-rounded perspective. The goal was to make sure every voice was represented, and I think they did an excellent job. The result we'll see today is incredibly balanced. That's because of the tremendous effort put into ensuring the inputs were balanced. Importantly, this recommendation is not the final word. It's the starting point. More public engagement will follow to refine and improve the program so that the final product is something we can all be proud of. Before I introduce Mr. Eric Adams, our Director of Public Works, he's going to run the course of the presentation until nearly the end. I do want to recognize him and our Public Works staff for the outstanding job they did in response to our inclement weather we just went through. They actually went out and opened up bridges that were closed and worked in partnership with our municipalities and the DOT. So thank you, sir. And this time I will Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Actually, I'm premature on that. At this time, I'd ask County Council for approval of minutes of January 22nd, 2026. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you everyone for being here. Special thanks to the City of North Charleston, Mayor Burgess, for having us at this great venue, beautiful venue to be at today to talk about the transportation sales tax program. With that, I'm just going to start out with a little background on the guiding principles. And if you'll remember, council members, we brought this to you in January, and these were kind of the overarching themes that we heard from the public through that robust public engagement process. So these were the key points that we used to develop the plan moving forward. So I'm not going to go through in great detail. We have reviewed these before, but just want to remind you of what drove the decision-making and kind of how we got here today with that robust public input process. And then real quickly, just touch on the schedule, where we've been, where we are today, and where we're going in this process. So as mentioned, started the robust outreach to the public, the municipalities, the engagement, trying to make sure every voice was heard. No idea was a bad idea. Let's get everything on the table and evaluate it. Today, we're at February 4th on the schedule. And again, this is our effort to present to you of what we've derived through this process and present this as an initial draft, a starting point for you to evaluate. Moving forward, we have built some time in here for any revisions that may be necessary by council, but also building in time to go back out to the public again for another round of public input, so that if there's any fine-tuning that needs to be done, that allows time for that to happen, allows time to comment, time for the public and municipalities to comment on what's been presented in this initial draft, and then with our target date of first reading in May of this year. So it keeps us on schedule to meet our deadlines for the 3 readings and the submission to the Election Commission. So just wanted to set the stage with that on kind of where we've been, how we got here, and where we're going moving forward. Today we'll have presentations from the 3 municipalities' mayors, also from CARTA and the Greenbelt. Then we'll have a break. After the break, we'll dive into project evaluation and ultimately the project recommendations. The presentations by the mayors and the CARTA and Greenbelts, we're asking that to be about limit you to 15 minutes, so we be cognizant of everyone's time and stay on schedule. With that, I'd like to call Mr. Mayor Reggie Burgess, City of North Charleston, up to the podium to present for City of North Charleston.
Good afternoon. No, my voice is heavy, so I'm going to try to get close to the mic. I want, first of all, for me, thank my Lord and Savior Jesus for allowing me to be here today. And I want to thank you all for participating, and I want to thank all the citizens of North Charleston who thought that I should keep, not only the chief of police, but becoming mayor. They made it happen for me, and I really want to thank you. Welcome to the City of North Charleston. And we appreciate you all being here. You know, this building is very historical. The Navy had a lot to do with it, and we really appreciate what they did, and we're just trying to continue to keep the efforts that the Navy did back in many, many decades ago. We want to continue this, and try to build this so that we can have our community to enjoy. But I came here today, as I said, to thank the chairman. And he and I go a long way back. We kick in many doors. We won't talk about that. But thank you, Chairman and the council. First, I want to thank you for the collaborative way that you approached the extension of this program. We appreciate that you brought municipalities to the table. That was the main goal to ask for. I stood in 2024 in West Ashley to support the I-526 expansion. But I'm standing for this more than anything. And I appreciate you guys, working it out with former Councilman, Chairman Calhoun, bringing us to the table. And Chairman Boyd, can you finish that for us? This process is going to be transparent and you made it unified. You know that North Charleston is the crossroads of this region. We know that. And we generate nearly 35% of the sales tax collection in the county. When our infrastructure works, and I'll say it again, when our infrastructure works, the whole county moves. I can't only think about North Charleston. I can't only think about just the corridor of North Charleston. I have to think about what's going on in the city of Charleston, what's going on in Mount Pleasant, and in Charleston County. I'm a team player. I'm a true team player. But right now, our unique geography with rail lines, interstates, and waterways, they're creating a literal barrier for our residents. We are in between the Ashley River and the Creek River. The priorities we are presenting today aren't just about pouring concrete. They're about healing those divides. You'll see a focus on critical overpasses to get emergency vehicles across train tracks. If we don't work on the LCRT and you get to Rivers Avenue and Durant, when you look south of it, you will see rail lines that blocks Rivers Avenue and rail line that would block Dorchester. If the train is long enough, it would block School Avenue as well. Just common sense. Vehicles across the train tracks, and we have a safe pedestrian access across the bridges. We always say, especially when I was a cop, do your part to uplift your community. Do the right thing. Live the best that you can. Don't take anything from anybody. And the number one thing my father taught me, who worked at the paper mill for almost 30 years, is you work for what you need. Well, we tell people to work, right? And they try to leave North Charleston to get to West Ashley to work at S&S and other places over there, and they can't afford it anymore. Can't even get in the bus sometimes. So they take their lives and they walk over that bridge. And in the middle of that bridge is a median. And if any truck or anything taps them on the shoulders, their lives are gone. Common sense, people. That's all we're saying. We need to work on that bridge so it won't be as dangerous as it is. We like to see strategies of investing in technology like ITS to make our current roads smarter and unlocking greenbelt funds so the public can actually walk on and enjoy preserved land. To walk you through the specifics of these corridors and our safety initiatives, I'd like to hand it over to one of my teammates that's going to catch this fast right now, Adam McConnell, Director of Special Projects. Thank you, Adam.
Good afternoon, everybody. Adam McConnell, City of North Charleston. I also have the pleasure of serving on your planning commission. Thanks to my friend Teddy Breyer. Anyway, what I want to do, I'm going to find my clicker here. And I'm just going to run through the list of projects here and some guiding principles that we have. For us, it's important as we look forward to the next 25 years, we know that 250,000 people will be moving to the Charleston region. That's an incredible influx. It's equal to the population currently of downtown Charleston and North Charleston combined. Those people need to live, they need to work, they need to be educated, they need to shop. And so how are we going to do that? This transportation sales tax is an essential tool for us to go manage and mitigate the impacts of that growth. But it should be tied to land use policies as well, regional land use policies. I think it's a conversation that's far too long. It needs to be had, so let's do that. Also, the city believes that we should be looking at intelligent transportation systems region-wide with not only Charleston County, Berkeley County, Dorchester County, and really trying to maximize what we can out of the existing infrastructure that we have, utilizing technology rather than concrete to be able to move people faster and farther. We also want to see equitable funding allocations. We want to make sure, as Mayor Burgess stated, 35% of the sales tax funds are generated in the city of North Charleston. The pitch that we've heard is that, well, half the sales tax dollars are not paid for by people who live in the region. But those people are often coming from Berkeley and Dorchester County, shopping in North Charleston, impacting our roads. And when they're in our community, they're our citizens, we expend public safety resources to take care of them, and we manage those roads appropriately. So we want to make sure that we have equitable funding allocations across the board here. We want to be able to leverage these funds with grant funds. We are actively pursuing multiple grant funds, either through the Federal Rail Administration, Federal DOT, and others, to try to achieve some of these projects. We want to make sure that we can leverage some of these funds if we have those opportunities right down the road. Greenbelt's really important. We want public access to public land. And also what we'd like to see is a small change in the Greenbelt program that will allow for the construction of walkways, pathways, boardwalks, not only in future Greenbelt acquisitions, but allow for them to be retroactively used for public access to public lands from properties that were acquired in the past before that was an option. We also want to look at community livability. So we've had a challenge in our community where the new overpass, which we're grateful for, that goes over Weber Boulevard, wiped out a line of trees. And at the time of that study's initiation, there was a noise study conducted. By the time the construction was done, the noise standard was lowered, and now we have a community that have 90 decibel sound readings in their backyard and no opportunities to provide sound walls. We need to use these funds to mitigate the impact of growth and the nuisance sound of the expanding highways needs to be addressed not only for future but also for past projects. We need to be able to use these funds for community revitalization as well. We need to be, as we continue to grow, we need to create great public spaces. That's parks, that's streetscapes, that's preserved lands. The Greenbelt program has been an exceptional tool for that. I think the stat is something on 40% of the counties under some form of conservation, which is a tremendous feat. And kudos to those visionaries who set up that program previously. The next general guiding principle is preservation. I don't think that the county gets enough credit for the pavement preservation program. That thing has been amazing to maintain the roads we have. It's really critical that we expand as much as we can that service. That's this county paying for mostly state roads, right? And so another challenge that we have are the stormwater systems within those state rights of way are not well maintained. They're undersized with different levels of storms. We would ask the county to evaluate whether or not a stormwater preservation program similar to the pavement preservation program could be established under this program. And again, we are thankful and want to see the continuation of annual allocations for safety, improvements, sidewalks, intersections, street striping, right? Sometimes we have some of the more dangerous roads in the country. We can do better, and we should do better. Other guiding principles, public transit. Public transit is critical. We cannot build our way out of congestion. We just are not able to do it due to our geography. We need to find alternative means of transportation. Public transit, including low country rapid transit, is critical to that success. We want to see additional investments in multimodal transportation, bike, pedestrians, and trails, as I had mentioned before. And for the city of North Charleston, overpasses and keeping communities connected, as the mayor alluded to, is really critical for us. The city of North Charleston bears a burden on the region from the impacts of interstate commerce, from the industrial developments that we have, that is borne unequally to the city of North Charleston. Our residents, the most calls we get in City Hall, people are blocked at a train, can't have trucks driving through their neighborhoods. There's a social cost to helping shore up the broader regional economy. And we want to make sure that the county is able to support us in making investments that we need to make sure that our communities remain livable. That being said, the next slide, here we go, lists some of these projects. We provided County Council last night with a list of projects and a narrative that sort of spelled out the justification and some of the impacts that these projects would have. I wasn't given a format of what this talk should look like, so I'm just going to run through them really quickly. We want to see the continued development of the Dorchester Road widening, the Airport Connector Road, and Palmetto Commerce Parkway Phase 3. I know those are all in the works. We want to make sure that the allocations that were made to the previous sales tax those funds are still available, and that any overages that may come out of this next sales tax are sort of taken before we look at a specific allocation from one community to another. That those projects that were promised are delivered. For us, we have 4 overpasses that we're looking at. One is at Durant and Rivers Avenue. That is along the Low Country Rapid Transit Corridor. We have some money set aside from a port mitigation, but we need to deliver that project so that Low Country Rapid Transit is successful long term. We also have a major challenge on Mall Drive. Mall Drive is where City Hall is. It's where Roper St. Francis is building their headquarters, $1 billion investment, and we can't get across the railroad tracks there safely in a wheelchair or by foot. I drove by a woman who almost got railed by a semi yesterday, pushing a baby carriage that had to get into the roadway in order to cross that overpass. It's critical because we're going to have 1,000 jobs there, patients there, and the bus rapid transit stop will be located at Mall Drive. We have to make sure we have safe accommodations over that overpass. The other 2 overpasses are impacts from the rail yard, the intermodal facility at the Navy Yard. Those that run south are going to come up the Central Rail Corridor, and at times are going to block 3 or 4 important rail crossings that will basically isolate certain communities for periods of up to an hour at a time once these things get running. There are opportunities that we've evaluated through some previous studies. One looking at can we connect Stromboli Avenue to Azalea Avenue as a new overpass that allows for continued continuity and public safety access, and also connectivity for the community there. And lastly, the other overpass on Virginia Avenue and Noisette Boulevard. That's the north entrance to the base. The South Carolina State Port Authority has, as you know, purchased the old paper mill on the Cooper River. There's a line that connects the existing port to that future port terminal. If rail starts running there, it will impede the very important future development that we see on as the future of North Charleston, really, which is this sort of downtown mixed-use development on the old Navy Yard that's getting kicked off this year. I'm almost done. I'll have mercy on you in a minute. The next. Community corridors. So this again, these are more streetscapes, intersections, and safety. We've identified 3 areas where we have high walkability, high bike and pedestrian usage, and a need for investment. These are Reynolds Avenue, which is next to a bus rapid transit stop. It's the old downtown of North Charleston. We need some help with looking at some drainage issues there, and some safety and pedestrian accessibility there. Stall Road and Midland Park is a very important sort of relief valve when Rivers Avenue and I-26 get bogged down. Stall Road and Midland Park Road become a very unsafe condition. We need to evaluate that and look for solutions to make that safer, more accessible. And Remount Road is another one that the state DOT is doing a traffic safety analysis on that roadway right now. We're not sure what those recommendations will look like, but I think that we'd like to look for some additional improvements above and beyond what they have traditionally been suggesting there. And that's sort of in partnership with hand-in-hand to some extent. Then again, we have bike and pedestrian infrastructure. North Bridge, we spoke about the North Bridge and there very eloquently. We have 2 major trail systems. These are not as ambitious as the Mount Pleasant Way, which is just a phenomenal project. But we do envision this river access along the Ashley River, along Azalea Avenue, Leeds Avenue, near the county facilities, that would eventually lead to Baker Hospital, to the Low Country Rapid Transit multi-use path into the low lines, creating a regional multi-use path that will be good for recreation, tourism, and others. And lastly, Noisette Trail. Noisette Trail is one of these projects where we've acquired a significant amount of land through the Greenbelt program. We have a need and desire to build a trail system through there. That funding was not available to us when we started acquiring those lands, and that's one specific project where we'd like to see if we can get some allocations in order to build trail systems and boardwalks from Rivers Avenue to the Navy Yard. Those are the major projects we have. You have a list of them that you were given last night. That's probably over my time, and I'm going to step away, but I'll take any questions if there are any. That's a lot of Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Mayor Burgess. Next up, I invite City of Charleston Mayor Cogswell to the podium to present the City of Charleston's priorities.
Let them work on that. I want to give a shout out to Mayor Burgess. I mean, what an incredible facility. And I tell you what, if I have to hear one more time about how great that playground is, it is impressive though, and impressive. And I'll also echo the mayor's points on, Chairman Boykin, you're wearing a cowboy hat. I feel like I'm at a rodeo with how many people have been wrangled into this road. It's impressive. We need to do this more often. And really hats off to the county for putting this together. And the transparency of it all, I think, goes a long way in establishing public trust in this process. And I think in terms of the process, kudos to past Chairman Middleton, Boykin, and all of County Council for being so organized and thoughtful about this, and of course staff and their consultants as well. While we're working on this too, we're ready?
Do you want to wait for it to download, or you can just look through right here?
What? You probably need to, I can flip through there, meaning you can push.
Yeah, right here. Or we can wait.
Okay. I'm like a curse when it comes to computers. Whenever, like, everything stops working when I get close by. Yeah, give it a couple seconds and I'll keep tap dancing here. But do want to give again shout out to the mayors. This has been really an awesome experience for me as the new mayor to come in and work so closely with these guys that obviously care deeply about their community. And I don't think I have to tell y'all that Charleston and the region has not always been as collaborative as it is today. And I think that the only people that suffer when that occurs is our residents. So I think it's been really empowering to see how the municipalities have come together and how we've been working very closely and seamlessly with the county in this process. And I'll just keep coming up with more compliments. I think this is actually a plan, but I also do want to give a shout out to the advocacy groups that have been part of this and all the citizens that have participated in this. It's been really cool to see how everybody, again, generally has come together. So, you know, there we go. We've kind of broken this down geographically, and that's not pit one group against the other, but when trying to figure out what our priorities were, we wanted to be respectful of our neighbors, North Charleston and Mount Pleasant, and try to factor in, you know, what of our neighboring municipalities and unincorporated areas and public service districts do we need to make sure are addressed in our priorities. So we kind of segmented it off where what we were looking at is we call the west side, so the peninsula, and this includes Folly Beach, Kiowa, Meggett, etc. And then what we did is, you know, we looked at a pretty detailed breakdown on what our population has done and where it's projected to go for the next 25 years. And we'll share with you all this data. I mean, a lot of this is in, or components of this are in the county's plan. Obviously, when the COG is done, we try to take a pretty scientific approach, not only on where growth has happened, but where it's projected to be, because we do have a, generally speaking, finite area. And it was a little bit surprising on where some of these growth patterns are happening in the most dramatic way. I mean, for example, up until for 50 years, the peninsula has been losing population. Last year is the first year it increased population. But if you look at the projections and what's entitled, the HUDs and the like, it is actually going to be one of the highest growth areas year over year in the entire region. Same thing with Outer West Ashley, as I know a lot of the residents out there are well aware of as it relates to traffic particularly. So one of the things that we were, again, starting high level, and again, want to applaud the advocacy groups, the environmental groups, but also everybody that seems to be working on this. The idea of the Greenbelt surrounding our area, it's been amazing what we've done and what the county's done with the advocacy groups over the past 25 years with Greenbelt funds, how much land has been protected. And we think that effort really does need to be continuing. So we've kind of used the urban growth boundary, which is what you see there in red, as kind of our line in the sand, so to speak. And want to really make sure that we focus our attention within existing infrastructure, because it's much more cost effective, it stretches tax dollars much further, and I think it's just frankly the definition of smart growth. So with the county, you know, obviously y'all are here today to talk mainly about major infrastructure projects, but also bike and pedestrian, this Greenbelt program, and again, I'm very much in support of a very robust percentage for Greenbelt because it has so many other compounding effects. It's the cheapest way to, I think, address growth in a constructive way. And of course, public transit is a close second to that. So I want to make sure that public transit is very much a priority. But then I represent, and the mayors and I have talked about this, we as the municipalities also have a very real responsibility in this long-term regional growth by making sure that our zoning reflects where the infrastructure is going, so that we're not zoning high density and there's not going to be roads there to address it or public transportation. Also, we need to figure out and be very aggressive about where we're putting housing, particularly affordable housing or workforce housing, so that we're putting it closer to jobs, so that you don't have as many people that are making as long of commutes again, because the road widening or extending projects are significantly more expensive than it is to help with housing within existing infrastructure grid. And other things that relate to the cities and we need to be prepared for, whether it be planning out for fire stations and police substations, but also rec facilities. I mean, like for example, Johns Island's long overdue for having a rec facility, and you know, we need to be preparing accordingly. So this really needs to be looked at as a holistic approach to our region's growth, not just where the roads are going. And so the way we did this, ladies and gentlemen, is not overly scientific. We basically took the projected dollar amounts that would be raised. We looked at the city of Charleston's per rate of population, which is rough, that's the west, that is a little bit of a typo, and then it's the city of Charleston plus the unincorporated areas. It's approximately 50% of the aggregate population. So we just said, look, okay, well, that's what our budget is to work with. And I know that sometimes that North Charleston might need a little bit more, we're not suggesting that. It was just a place for us to start from so that we felt like we were not taking too much of the pie but also getting our fair share. So that was our budget, our target budget in aggregate when you look at what we come up with. And then we did that even further, and this was something that we discussed with council. We said, okay, broke it down on population within our areas and the corresponding municipalities. We also went a little bit further, and I can get into a lot more weeds here, but I got limited time, where population is expected to grow the most. James Island has terrible traffic issues, but in terms of actual opportunities for substantial future growth, it's pretty limited. West Ashley, not so much. Peninsula, you're going to see a lot more growth there. So we tried to factor that in when we were looking at what our priorities were. So I'll just get into it. We broke it down by area. West Ashley, we came up with the U.S. select widening, drainage improvements, other intersection improvements. This is stuff that we've worked on with DOT and with the county. This should come as no surprise to folks in this room. There's a lot of work to be done on that. It is a major artery, and it includes things like the ITS, smart signaling, and looking at how we can holistically impact intersections. But also Glen McConnell at Magwood, that's something that we're in part working with DOT on, but it's kind of lingering, and that intersection is getting worse and worse and worse. And then finally, Ashley River Road is often underwater. There's also a lot of road safety improvements that are going on through DOT. We want to make sure that those are not just concrete and steel cabling, that there's some beautification components of that as well. Johns Island, one of the biggest problem areas in terms of traffic in our region. Our priority here originally was Maybank widening, just the added lane getting off, and we've scratched that out, because I understand it. Everybody give a round of applause that the county has got another funding for that lane to happen. So we have thankfully been able to take that off of this one, but we do think that the Maybank, the Southern Pitchfork, and the roundabout that's been contemplated, we've been working closely with the county on that, will have a huge impact on ingress and egress off the island, that major pinch point. And then we go down to May Road at Maybank from Plowground to Chisholm. That is a very problematic corridor, and these are all priorities that have been vetted with the county, the city for 5 or 6 years now. And then wrapping up with River Road intersections and enhancements. There's a lot of concern about trucks and the safety on River Road, and then of course Maybank improvements. I mean, Maybank, as I tell people, Maybank is not a highway anymore, it's a main street, and we need to think of it that way. It is an urban area, and it is important to make sure that we treat it as such. James Island, priority here, Riverland and Maybank intersection. I don't think that's a huge fix. There's a couple of different alternatives there, but it's a major pinch point. It affects Johns Island, it affects the town of James Island. This is an area that I think there's a relatively easy fix. Harborview Road, this is another major corridor that's important. There's part of it that again is underwater, right when you get off the connector, that backs everything up. So we need to look at that. And then Folly Road improvements, this much like what I was talking about with 61, the state is moving forward with their road safety audits to make that much safer, to rethink Folly. But we want to make sure it's attractive too. I mean, like what Mount Pleasant did such a good job of on 17 North, with the beautification. So it's safer, but it's also much more attractive than just highway improvements. The peninsula, this is one where I'll talk about Lockwood and Haygood, but I want to be very, very, very clear in this very, very public forum that what we are talking about here largely is the battery extension initiative that we are working on with the Army Corps of Engineers, where the Army Corps of Engineers, the federal government, will fund 65% of this project. So we are looking for the transportation sales tax to provide a part of the local match. And I'm going to get into this in a little bit more detail because of all these projects, there has been more confusion about this one. So I want to make sure that we're setting the record straight. But it's not just the battery extension, Eugene Street improvements and Calhoun Street improvements. These are two major arteries in the peninsula, which, again, is a major source of revenue for the sales tax, for the state, for the federal government. So we need to make sure that we do everything we can to protect it. So on that front, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the battery, and I want to make it very clear that that is not because we are trying to prioritize the battery over any of these other projects, West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island. It is because it is the one that is probably the least understood and most complicated one in the public. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail here, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page with what we're talking about here. So when we looked at the battery, when the Army Corps did this initial study, you heard it called a wall. Some people still refer to it as a wall. I get really frustrated by that because we've spent 18, almost 24 months working with the Army Corps to to change their original alignment and their original design to where it's a marriage of form and function. And we've used the historic battery as an example of what we want to see. We want to see something that connects the $100 million art bridge that comes in from West Ashley on the peninsula into something like you see right here on the right that wraps 7.5 miles of the harbor on the peninsula of public access to the water. It would be like nothing else has ever been seen in the United States. This would be a monumental project that would, again, be a marriage of form and function because it connects all of these major arteries, ultimately through the Eugene Street improvements, connects the low line, protects the hospital district, helps the port, protects the International African American Museum, helps the Union Pier project get moving. The benefits of this, plus the fact that the federal government will pay 65% of it, the time is now to move on this. So, we've broken it down because this is being proposed in phases, and I think in terms of what we would be looking for here, I want to make sure that it's clear that not all of the battery as proposed would be covered by the half-cent sales tax. Again, only a portion of the local match. The balance would be coming from, we'll get to that in a minute, but the western alignment is from Broad Street, protecting the medical district, coming into the Art Bridge, protecting the Joe, West Edge, and going up to the Civic, which you see on the western alignment. And I'm going to come back to that point, that visual down there in the corner, because this is doing more than protect the peninsula against a hurricane or a tidal surge. We have, again, spent the past 18 months designing this in a way that can help significantly with stormwater, which is how and why we flood on a pretty regular basis and shuts down the peninsula. So, the other phases are high battery replacement up around the African American Museum, and then you have Northern Morrison, New Market Creek. We don't have the port property in here. We don't have Union Pier in here because those would be paid for by the developer of Union Pier, the local match would be, and the port would pay for the improvements on Columbus Terminal. So it's a combination of a lot of different funding sources that come together for a system that will have a dramatic impact. So what does that dramatic impact mean? This was a modeling of the Northeasterner that occurred in 2023. It was the second highest flooding incident in the city, second only to Hurricane Hugo. And this is an actual modeling of what happened that day. And if we were to install the battery extension, again, this linear part around the peninsula, this is what the same model shows. It doesn't flood. It protects against surge. It actually addresses stormwater as well. And so it's a marriage of these two massive flooding components that impact a huge economic engine for our region. And that is why we think this is so important and wanted to spend a little bit more time on this for clarification, okay? And I'll just wrap up again. The current estimate is 1.3 billion. Federal government would spend almost 900 million. We need 477 in aggregate. These numbers could move around, could go up. I mean, but what we're asking for is a cap from the county of 300 million. The balance, as I said, would come from the port, would come from the city, ATAX, and come from the private developers. And so of the 300 million, it's broken down. The first phase would be that western alignment. It would go up the Protected Medical District, needs about 200 million. And then the other would be parts of the eastern alignment that I showed earlier. So, again, won't spend any more time on that, but it was important for us, I think, to get this out there and make it very open and transparent about what we're talking about. So, those are our city priorities. We've also run analysis and vetted those with third-party cost estimators, done escalators on it. So we've tried to really vet this and make sure that we are asking for and proposing an equitable portion of it. And look forward to what the conversations lead to today. And again, really appreciate your time, patience, and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cogswell. Next, we would like to invite from the town of Mount Pleasant, Mayor Haney, come to the podium.
Well, good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here. Reggie, it's great to be in your town always. Always nice to be here. I hope y'all have noticed how well the mayors of the three big ones work together, William and Reggie and I. I do have one beef with the two of them. They need to stop referring to me as the old man. So I would appreciate that. But I think I deserve that. I also have Brad Morrison, who is going to work with me up here. He's going to go over the details. In my 10 years of public service now, I have learned one thing. The only profession with more acronyms than the military is highway engineering. And I know about that much. And I heard a few, both of y'all had some in your presentations. So I just want to say a couple of things. One is I want to thank and just show you the support that the leadership of Mount Pleasant has by being here today. But don't stand up. Mayor Pro Tem Howard Chapman, Council members Mike Tinke, Catherine Whitaker, and Alex Crosby are here. And I also want to point out, we are such sticklers for propriety that in order to avoid a quorum being together, 4 of us are at one table and the quorum maker is at the other. So if you're taking pictures, please make sure you note that. So before I do this, I want to mention something. Somebody gave me a great book for Christmas, and it's 500 pages, and it's historical research about the leadership decisions that were or were not made in the lead up to the Civil War. And it's all about what happened in Charleston. And when you read in that, the research is so great, it gets down to what people had for breakfast, what time they met with so-and-so, and it's fascinating. And I couldn't put the book down, and as I read it, I looked over at my wife, Suzette, and I said, you know, this thing covers when people went east of the Cooper, when they went to Morris Island, when they went to James Island, when they were downtown, how they got from Charleston to Washington, all of this about this region. And of course, Fort Sumter was at the center of that. And I realized, you know, I'm reading about people's leadership moment between 1860 and April of 1861. And I realize, and when I look at the leaders in this room, this might be the biggest leadership moment that any of us have. Because as we have said to our council members, if we don't make this work for our people to where they support it, it doesn't work for any of us, and I don't know who's got the answer to where $4 billion for our infrastructure will come from. So I am a little bit intimidated by this leadership moment, but I'm strengthened by our council. We had our leadership retreat last week, and what you'll hear from us today is what our priorities are, and I know we're last. Two things, we'll keep it short, and two, I'll show you where some of the money that Charleston and North Charleston wanted should really go to Mount Pleasant. Just kidding, not at all. So one is of course, it's about our road infrastructure, our transportation infrastructure. I know, and I think most of y'all know, that other than overdevelopment, the biggest complaint we hear about is traffic, is sitting in traffic. And so we have got to find a way to do that, but it's also, as you just saw in Mayor Cogswell's presentation, and Mayor Burgess, it is for y'all too, it's also about resiliency. We have got to make that paramount. I've never seen it more important or more discussed than it is now. Second is green space. Our council, and I think our citizens strongly support 20% of the referendum proceeds going to green space. Would ask you to bond that up front because we never know when the next big tract is going to come for sale. We don't have time to wait. We have to act. There are market forces at play. There are seller circumstances at play, and everybody knows we're dealing with one of those right now. So I just ask you to please consider that. And if you don't think that green space is part of your or affects your infrastructure, look at what would have happened at Boone Hall, 640 acres right in the middle of Mount Pleasant, if it had not been conserved. And so I don't think there would be enough money in a referendum to provide enough pavement to have dealt with that. The other is bike and pedestrian, and we'll talk about Mount Pleasant Way. Our biggest road projects that we set as our priorities are Northcutt and Highway 17, so that when you come over the Ravenel Bridge, you've got something better to deal with than that malfunction junction that we have there right now. Long Point Road because of flooding, and we need turn lanes at places like Boone Hall that I just mentioned, and Brad's going to go into more details. And then Darrell Creek Trail, as you get up past Wando High School, needs to be realigned with Leben Road and made safer as everybody knows, that is the fastest growing part of Mount Pleasant up there on the northern end of town. So with all that in mind, I want to ask Brad Morrison to come up and go over just a few pictures that we have, and then we'll answer any questions. Brad?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chairman, members of County Council, leadership from the municipalities, appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the staff that I get to work with at all levels, and including the county specifically on this. It's been really a joy and pleasure to do that. I'm 27 years in at the town, and I can tell you the relationship that we've had with the county and all the municipalities has been fantastic. You have a wonderful group of professional people that are really dedicated public servants. So with that being said, let's move on to the engineers. We have tables. We don't have pretty pictures. We may have some pretty pictures. The mayor's already mentioned several of the projects that the town has prioritized. This happened last week at our retreat, and we submitted this to the county. And the first number one priority for, I guess what we would call feature projects would be Johnny Dodds Boulevard. That would be either a grade separation, what we call an overpass, or an at-grade solution, high-capacity at-grade solution at that location. Of course, there's many roads and intersections around that would be affected to be a part of the project. Wingo Way, East Northcutt, Mathis Ferry. We have other improvements in that area that would be included in that project development. So that is our number one project. The number two project is the Long Point Road corridor, primarily the two-lane section that we have. We have some significant flooding issues. A lot of that's in the county, and it's been recognized for a very long time that the state would love the state to fix that. That doesn't look like that's going to happen. So we think there's some solutions there that the half cent could certainly address. We also have, as a part of that, and this is different from our 2024 ask, was to include the Whipple Road improvements. It's a safety corridor project. It's mainly an intersection improvement down near Lucy Beckham High School as well as Mount Pleasant Way, implemented along the corridor. And we have that listed here. And the mayor mentioned also in the northern part of town, we have Darrell Creek Trail realignment. And let's see, these are merely locations for context. I think everybody knows where US 17 Johnny Dodds East Northcutt. This is a single point urban interchange concept. Is that great solution? A Long Point Road corridor from Whipple Road on the left all the way to 17. 2 bridge replacements would be required. 1 is already programmed by the DOT. This is the section of road that really needs flooding addressed. And then turn lanes in other areas near Boone Hall. And lastly, the realignment of Darrell Creek Trail to Levin Road. Mount Pleasant Way, the mayor mentioned this. This is a 47-mile multi-use path network throughout the town of Mount Pleasant. It's a phenomenal concept. We've already built, have built or dedicated about a third of it. And hopefully I'll be here when it's all finished. That's it for me. And Mayor, I don't know if you have any closing remarks.
Sure. If you have any questions, one of the things we did in 2023, we did what I call a traffic management study, what the professionals call a mobility action plan. And that identifies the choke points of our traffic where our residents, your constituents, our constituents are dealing with traffic the most. Like 95,000 cars a day at the foot of the Ravenel Bridge. So that what we reflected in our vote from town council is where the quickest amount and the smallest amount of money will get the biggest result. And so we've got 10 pages more, and we won't run through it, of this PowerPoint. We just showed you the last 5 that shows those numbers, where people are commuting from, where the traffic drops off from. So if y'all had questions about that, because we want our citizens to feel like this shot at this amount of money, this one-time shot, is going to get the best fixes that we can get for our residents in all of this. So if y'all have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them or as we get through. And again, I want to thank y'all, one, for doing this. I want to thank Mr. Chairman and Mr. Sass for coming to our retreat and addressing us. Thank y'all for the way y'all are approaching this. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad and Mayor Haney. Next up, we'll have Carter Chairman Mike Seegings to speak on train tickets.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of County Council. First and foremost, thank you for your service to our community. Thank you for your commitment to what we're talking about here today, the future of our region. And say one of you, and we're going to get you, thank you for your service on the Carter Board, because I think 8 out of 9 of you have spent some time with us. Councilmember Kowalski, we're going to get you one of these days to come and serve with us. There are a number of other people in this room who have served on the Carter Board over the course of time. So thank you for doing that. To my mayor, Cogswell, and to Mayors Burgess and Haney, thank you for your service. I would be remiss if I didn't shout out a member of City Council who's here today, Councilmember McBride, who I think is very interested in what's going on with the TST, particularly when it comes to mobility on Johns Island. So a little bit of perspective, if you don't mind. I'm going to be quick, but just a little bit of perspective. I have now sat on the Carter Board, Mayor, for 17 years. 17 years. And we have come a long way, as has this region, and we've done it together. Carter's brought this region along, and this region's brought Carter along. Where did we come from? Before the TST, before there was a TST, Carter was literally an invention of the city of Charleston through its franchise agreement with SCE&G. You give us power, we'll give you the revenue, but you got to run the bus system. It was quite an adventure. We were populated with buses that came from the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. We ran the oldest bus fleet in America, and we back then had about 200% fewer service hours than we have now. We're moving with TST along other things. Here we are today. We've got upgraded fleet. We have committed to replace our fleet with battery electric buses. We're getting there. We've got about 120 buses in the process of replacing all of them. Park and rides have popped up all over the place. Better service for our customers, free gas service on the peninsula. We'd like to see more of that as we expand into our community. We're heading to a new terminal, which is great. And you may have heard of Card on Demand, which has really brought our costs down from providing paratransit service with on-demand service through private Lyft companies and Uber. So we've come a long way. And I will just say this as I go on to the next few slides. If I were to ask everybody in this room right now to take a pen in your hand with a piece of paper in front of you and write down what makes a great and good community, region, gives it growth and life and opportunity and vibrancy, somewhere on that list, and probably closer to the top than the bottom, would be mobility and public transit. And as you will see, I think in this presentation, the TST is really key to that. So, coming in 2029, you've heard some preview of this and the comments made by the mayors, Low Country Rapid Transit. This is the first ever large-scale transit project, not just in this region, but in the state of South Carolina, which is really something, if you think about it, you can go a long way around this world and not find a place where they haven't had some large-scale transit project. And I see Secretary Hall sitting here. I have to give her a lot of thanks for getting this off the ground from when she was in the DOT. We've come a long way. So here it is. And the way we're going to fund this is 60% through a federal FTA capital investment grants program. 40% of this project, which is a $650 million project, is being paid for by TST funding. To show how important TST funding is pushing us forward into the future. This is the future. For those of you who are here who are at Reality Check 2.0, the centerpiece of what we talked about was the corridor where LCRT is going to travel and the economic growth opportunities that that corridor is going to have, not just on the high end, but every level. Mayor Burgess, I'm going to show you that in a second. If I can get this to work. So transit investment is good investment. I'll do this very quickly. Public transit fuels growth. For every dollar we invest, you get 5 back in the region. It's good investment for the region. I think all of you who either elected officials or work on staff in government, when you hear from the private sector, particularly those coming here, the Boeings of the world, the Volvos of the world, Mercedes of the world, lots of the other people who come, they want mobility and transit for their employees, for their families. They're used to it. They want to see it. They want to see it on the ground, and they want it to be efficient. The TST, of course, is a way to do that. All right, so this is the LCRT corridor. We will cut a ribbon and break ground on this, I believe, team back here, Mr. Mitch Mazier, in 2029. Again, the first ever large-scale transit project in the history of the state of South Carolina. It goes through about a land area that's less than 1% of the land mass of this region, a good bit of it, Mayor Burgess in North Charleston, comes into downtown Charleston. It will butt up against Berkeley and Dorchester counties, which is key for the future. Right now, that corridor employs 81,700 people, about 25% of the regional employment, about 62,000 people in that corridor. It's bustling. What about in 2045, when we get rolling on this, when it's up and running, when it's fully operational? It will, in that corridor, have up to 25% of the regional development in the corridor. Importantly, lots of opportunities, not just for economic growth, but for the way we live, work, and play. That missing middle, affordable housing, the things that we talk about all the time. North Charleston's already adopted a transit-oriented development overlay zone, which allows for density and for affordability that we otherwise don't have. And if you just look throughout there, through residential, retail, office, and hotel, all growth areas in our region, all things worthy of investment on the front end. The market demand is there. You're going to see a $6.5 billion increase in the value in that corridor in the next 25 years. Allocation, I think you all, members of County Council, know if you go and average out the allocation over the last 2 asset sales taxes, and this is a continuation of one of them, the money that is spent on transit, public transit, and CARTA is about 25% of the gross total. And if you look at our numbers that I know we've shared with you, that is a number that really makes some sense for the future as we grow. But we can sort of talk about that. 75% of our operating funds come through the TST. So as we look to our 25-year plan, a couple things on there that you might not naturally think about when it comes to public transit. One that I really like is the use of ferries and ferry service. That would be a natural for CARTA. You might remember Secretary Hall when we lost the use of the bridge on 526. The first thing we did is we sat down with the SCDOT. What do? We activated ferry service, and it worked, That is part of the future of transit in this region, and it's something that we need to invest in. Transit infrastructure, the LCRT expansion, all of those things. Just a couple scenarios, and I'll sit down. At 15%, we really are status quo ante. We might even be swimming a little bit backwards against the tide as we grow and our needs grow. We certainly will not be able to expand service. And I think someone talked a little bit earlier about how this region is going to expand in terms of people. It's going to be a challenge for us, for sure. At 20%, we can probably get a 70% growth in our service. We can expand our bus fleet some. We're going to have to, by the way, with LCRT. It's going to take up a good number of buses. We can do some modernization of our maintenance facility. And then, for us, the gold standard here is at 25%. That really gets us to a place where we can grow through the region, not just stay status quo ante. We can look to 2045 and say we will be there and ahead of it, ahead of the growth, providing the transportation, and the opportunities that go with that. It's not just mobility opportunities, it's housing opportunities, it's zoning opportunities, it's what our region is going to look like. It's why you put transit on the top 5 things that make a good and great community. So with that, Mr. Chairman and County Council, thank you for your considerations. I know there's a lot of needs in this region, for sure. I'll tell you this, and I forgot to put it in there. One of the things that we do every single month at CARTA is we move 40,000 people in and out of the largest employment center in the state. That's MUSC. They're our biggest customer, our biggest employer. That's kind of indicative of the needs for not just looking at mobility and transit, the transit corridors, as Mayor Cogswell talked about. The transit corridor for LCRT includes the east-west component of Calhoun Street. Calhoun Street is the gateway to MUSC. So not only will we be bringing 40,000 people plus along that route as it grows and builds its new cancer center, that corridor there is one of the corridors that the city has put on its list of things that needs to be attended to because it's got to be open for business. And when it's flooded, it's not open for business, and MUSC isn't. So it's all tied together. Transit, mobility, the need to put these funds towards a number of different things. Thank you for your consideration. Look forward to working with you. And it's been an honor, I could say, for these last 17 years to work through a system that has gone from being underfunded, for being having the oldest buses in America, to now being at the forefront of the growth of this region. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Seekings. Next up, we'll have Charleston County Housing and Land Management Director, Eric Davis, to speak on the Greenbelt program and provide a staff recommendation.
Thank you, Eric. I realize I stand between everyone and their break. I promise not to do the shortest presentation. I headed the right way? All right, just wanted to start with a little bit of a historical perspective on the program, because even as recently as today, there was some confusion over how the pot was divided up in the past for the Greenbelt. So November 2004, of the total amount, Greenbelt received $221 million, or 17% of the pie. Right off the top of that, $36 million went to Charleston County Park and Recreation Commission. In November 2016, $210 million for Greenbelts, which was 10%. Drilling down just a little bit more into the first transportation sales tax, those funds were divided up 70% to the rural area and 30% inside of the urban growth boundary. Those funds were allocated after $36 million came off the top for Charleston County Parks and $90 million for debt service. So first sales tax, we did issue some debt service up front at the cost of $90 million, and then the balance was split 70-30 between the rural and the urban programs. More recently, the second transportation sales tax was split right down the middle, 50-50 between rural and urban greenbelt program. Council, I did want to point out, in the past, you all made these allocation decisions, I believe, after the referendum was passed. Given the reset that you approach, perhaps you want to consider making those decisions prior to the referendum this time around. And moving on to the staff recommendation. So the one guiding principle related to Greenbelt is to use Greenbelt to manage growth, protect natural areas through continued Greenbelt investments that limit overdevelopment and preserve quality of life. The feedback that we've received from the municipalities, from the public, from our stakeholder groups, have led us to recommend 20% or $850 million for Greenbelt. Really, the discussion I have heard about the split is that it should continue to be 50-50 as the second TST was. If you back out $12 million of that, which is 1.5% for admin and to hold in reserve, that leaves $419 million for actual projects between the rural and urban areas. And here's a further breakdown of what that would look like within the urban growth boundary. So I'll just hit the big three. Charleston would look at just under $150 million for the lifetime of the program. Mount Pleasant just over $100 million, and North Charleston just under $100 million. One other thing I wanted to point out that has come up in council the last few cycles is that the urban unincorporated would see about $38 million based on 20%, and the normal existing distribution based on population. That would likely still mean that urban is in the hole a little bit for the next few years before those funds would start rolling in and bring it back to the black. Overall, I think we're well positioned with our current program, which utilizes conservation easements and fee simple acquisition for public parks, to implement the guiding principle, and be happy to answer any questions you may have. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We've reached the point in the agenda for a break. We're going to target a 5-minute break. We'll get going back at 2:17. Thank you. I appreciate all the great conversations that are going on around the room. So I hate to break those up. I wanted to get back on our agenda and keep things rolling. So we're going to start out talking about the funding investment categories, allocations, and then also we'll have a briefing from the county CFO, Matt Guile. First off, I just wanted to brief council members on the funding distribution that I presented on January 22nd and what changed from that time period. So working with our CFO, Matt, we took a harder look at our carryover needs, but also developed out a projected 25-year cash flow funding plan. So this is what we presented on January 22nd. And if you remember when I presented at that time, I said that our debt service, we were still working on what that number would look like, and we included that in the featured project section of the pie, 41% of the pie. So some portion of that we knew was going to be debt service. Now, one of the things we've heard through this progress is, from the public is we need to expedite these projects and move them forward. So part of expediting projects and moving them forward means you have to borrow money to move that money forward to get things done faster. And there is a cost associated with that borrowed money, which we refer to as debt service. We also took a harder look at our carryover needs, and based on council's action of reallocating funding that was previously allocated to the Mark Clark, we funded those to existing projects, so that reduced some of our carryover needs moving forward. So this is what was January 22nd presentation. We had 6% in the carryover and 41% in the featured. Now you're going to see on the next slide the revision to that. So you can see that the carryover need has dropped from 6% to 2%. So we're projecting $113 million of carryover to make sure we finish those projects that are already in the works, specifically ensuring that Dorchester Road project will be completed and the Palmetto Commerce Parkway Phase 3 project. Additionally, you'll notice the feature project number has dropped from 41% to 38%, and the addition of a new pie slice, if you will, on debt service at $284 million, or 7%. I'm going to turn it over to Mac here in a minute, and he'll brief you on the financial plan around that and why that debt service number is what it is. Matt couldn't be with us today. He is on virtually, so I'm going to ask Nick to come up and help facilitate that so Matt can make his presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. Since I'm speaking from a box, can you guys hear me okay? Okay. So after the presentation to council at the end of January, from a financial perspective, we run it through a model to see if it makes sense from a cash flow perspective. And with the Greenbelt's world still at 20%, the challenge with these models is that we're layering 3 25-year models over themselves. So Greenbelt's has a little bit more money to spend, beginning with this upcoming budget, as well as the second sales tax. And then, as was mentioned by Eric Davis, the third sales tax has most of the money going to projects. Since there was a comment about bonding that all at the beginning, financial staff would not recommend that. There's other ways to deal with unexpected projects that might become available. Because we also have to spend the bonded money within 5 years, which I don't think is doable. And we don't want that to impact our capacity to borrow related in the roads program and the intertwined bond ratings that we get. The next component was in roads. Still at 2.75 billion. I think Eric stole my thunder a little bit, but that's fine. If you're looking at the breakdown, this is in pretty much 5-year segments. And you see that the future projects did go down some. If you look at that debt service column, you'll see that we have a negative number. That's when we borrow the money. There's $1 billion of borrowing to make the cash flows work. We kept the signal intersection paper the same, and already talked about the reduction in carryover. We kept the bike and the ped the same. I think that this is probably already talked through. The future projects went down some to absorb the service. We pushed back the future projects maybe a year or so to make the cash flows work. The allocations didn't have a change in the dollar amount, but they were somewhat delayed, that we start out with a lower amount and it builds over time. Got a following slide to go through the carryover and that change. And then the bike ped was same thing as allocations. The overall dollar amount didn't change, but we started out at a lower dollar amount to make the cash flows work. So the carryover needs from the last referendum, we were at $282 million. Council has reprogrammed some money in the first sales tax, and there probably will be some opportunity to do some future reprogramming in the first sales tax as we wrap that up. And then the Highway 78 project was reevaluated and was pulled out of that game. So even though the future projects is a little higher now, as we learn more things about the program, if we get grants to offset some costs, if the cash flows aren't as immediate, we may be able to do more than what's in the future projects, but we'll have to wait on some more data before we could reach that conclusion. With transit, they're at 650 billion. I've got 4 slides here. This is what it looked like based on what we knew at the end of January. That CARTA had some money from the first sales tax and a lot from the second sales tax that hasn't been spent yet. And then adding the third on it, it appeared that we would be able to fund the operating cost and have some capacity for new projects. Based on some new information that we received earlier this week, operating costs for CARTA has gone up. I think that some of it might be related to the pandemic, and it took a little bit more time for it to hit the transit world. But based on the 15%, it became more of a matter of funding what is currently existing and planned for bus rapid transit. And as you already heard today, the 15% really doesn't allow for anything new. It just basically sustains current operations. So that's the end of the validation, I guess, through our models. And we did have to use the 4th sales tax to make some of transit work. That even with the cumulative impact of all 3 of the sales tax, the 4th one was needed to maintain operations for the last 5 to 7 years, or the first 5 to 7 years of a 4th sales tax. If that stayed at 15%, it still wouldn't provide the opportunity for any new improvements. So with that, I'm going to see if there's any questions that you guys might have.
I'm seeing no questions, Max, so thank you very much for that detailed briefing. I think Mac's going to stay on the call with us as well, so at the end, when we get to the discussion point with council, hopefully Mac will be available to address questions as well. Moving on to the next agenda item, I'd like to invite the county consultant, former SCDOT Secretary of Transportation, Christy Hall, who the county's been blessed to work with on this project, up to present on our project evaluations.
Yes, too talkative. Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, members of council, chairman, I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to work with you all. It has been really a pleasure so far, engaging with your staff, with the municipal staff, and others that have been working not only on this project, but other initiatives relative to transportation here in Charleston County. And so it's been very refreshing to engage with such a great group of people. So, you know, part of the benefit of somebody like me is having come from the state level, we had to prioritize thousands of projects to try to figure out what's the best way to spend the allocations. And so with that experience in mind, my involvement in this project so far has been, how do we go from this big giant list of needs to funneling it down or sorting it or scoring it in a way to get it to a manageable list of projects that could be reviewed for funding. So, All right, so the process to get to a staff recommendation is really in four individual steps. The first was that giant list of 600 projects that we received from the public input phase so far, as well as what we had visibility to from the municipalities. And we took all that information and loaded it into a spreadsheet. So every single project that got submitted, regardless of who submitted it, we looked at it and evaluated it as part of the screening process. And what we did within that screening process was look to see, did it address a congestion or congested area, or did it address a safety need or identified area? So really, basically, those buckets, so to speak. And so we looked at it that way to screen it, consistent with the guiding principles that council had adopted, which was to focus on projects that dealt with congestion relief and safety. After we did that screening process, that got us down from 600 plus projects down to about 50 projects through that process. And then the real work began on that 50 projects to go through and really look at those projects in terms of scope, whether they were feasible to be able to be delivered, and an updated cost estimate for those particular projects, as well as details with regards to the safety and congestion component. And then third, as part of that process on that candidate list, we developed a scoring system to score each individual project so that we would be able to apply that specific criteria relative to safety and congestion to each individual project and come up with a project score at the end of the day. And then consistent with those guiding principles, the staff has identified specific projects that it will provide as a recommendation to council here shortly. So talking about how we went from the 600 down to the 50, it really was a pretty simple process of saying each individual project, which of these 4 boxes does it check? Does it check 1 box, 2 boxes, 3 boxes, or 4 boxes? And when you do that, it really becomes apparent pretty quickly that projects that had 3 or more check boxes, regardless, any combination of those 3 check boxes, were the ones that we really need to zero in and focus on. So that's where the list of 50 came from, was projects that checked at least 3 out of the 4 boxes in any combination. The only exception to that was what we had visibility to from the municipalities at that particular time when we put this list together. Any project that was on that list automatically moved forward, whether it had 3 boxes, 4 boxes, or 2 boxes. So full credit to the municipalities to make sure their projects got vetted. Then we went about defining criteria and how we were going to score those individual projects. And council members, you should have before you a nice little document that talks about the criteria and the scoring system that was developed to score these 50 individual projects. And it leaned very heavily on public and municipal support, which was 50 points out of a total 100 for each individual project. So 50 points dealt with support for the project publicly and within the municipality. The next 30 points dealt with congestion, and then 20 points dealt with safety. So support, congestion, safety was the criteria that was set up. And so the scoring matrix was basically, if a project was the first listed or was identified by the municipality as their #1 priority, then it got 50 points. If it was the third project, it had a #3 listed, or was the third in a grouping of projects, then we assumed that it would fall under that 40-point scenario. The same thing was applied across all 3 municipality lists with regards to that. On the congestion, it's very simple, kind of getting into the engineering terminology, but the thing that was identified there was level of service in the future. Looking at it in the future to see what level of service. Is it that particular project in an area where it's going to be congested, free flow, or moderately congested, and apply a score to that. So if it was an E or an F, which means it's pretty much bumper to bumper, not moving traffic, then it would receive the highest number of points within that category, so it would receive 30 points. If it was free flow conditions or predicted to be, maybe intermittent delays, then it would be 15 points on that particular one. And then finally, on safety, we went through and worked with the Council of Government, so shout out to Ron Mitchell and his team for helping us work up some of these infographics that we utilized to develop both the congestion scores and the safety scores. So if it had a very high number of fatal and serious injury crashes per mile, then it was categorized as a high number on the safety criteria, so we received the highest number of points. If it was medium, maybe a little bit less than the high number as far as crashes, then it would receive kind of a middle score, which was 15 points out of the possible 20, and so forth and so on as you went through. So we tried to set it in a way that the projects that were dealing with the very worst traffic conditions and some of the most unsafe areas would receive the highest scores, as well as projects that had municipal and public support. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So this is just a quick shot of the information with regards to what we had at the time when we were working on this yesterday on how we would score some of the municipal submittals, or at least the information that we had at that particular point in time. So while each Mount Pleasant, Charleston, and North Charleston did a great job putting their list together, they each kind of used a little different nomenclature within their list, so we tried to normalize that to get some level of consistency across all three. So if it was listed as like a number one within the city of North Charleston, they may have had 1, 2, or 3 number ones. We assumed they were all of their top priorities, so we gave them 50 points for each one of those projects that was listed as number one in that first criteria box. For the city of Charleston, it was more like geographical, somewhat similar to what Mount Pleasant did. It was these corridors or areas where they identified and listed projects. So whatever project they had listed number one, or the first bullet for West Ashley, we assumed would be a high scoring or high priority project, so we assigned the maximum number of points to those particular projects. This is a quick look at some of the infographics that we received from the BCD-COG, which again was tremendously helpful to us. And it's a little insight into how we got to evaluate these individual projects. So each individual project, we went in and looked at the location on these two maps, congestion and safety. And using the scale that BCD-COG provided us, after looking at those corridors, we would assign the number of points that matched whatever level of service or crash rate was reflected on these particular charts. So every single project received this analysis and review and associated score with it to go within the matrix. I mentioned that as part of the work that we also developed some cost estimates for these projects, and before we get into the nitty-gritty on the cost estimates, we did take the opportunity as part of this exercise to make sure that we were accounting for the change in construction costs that are being seen throughout really the whole U.S., but also here in Charleston County and the state. So this shot here is something that's produced on a monthly basis by the Federal Highway Administration, and it's a pretty good inside look at what costs are looking like on highway projects these days. And you can see hopefully at the bottom is the timeline, and it bases or starts out at 2003. Pretty normal growth rate until you get up until the pandemic time, which was around 2020. And then cost escalated about 65 to 70% over that recent period here, until you get up to about 2025, where it's somewhat leveled out. I'm going to use that term kind of loosely because it's hard to say you got a trend based on just, you know, 1 year or 18 months worth of data. But it's not growing at the same rate that it had been growing. But that 70% increase that happened prior to 2018 or after 2018 up until 2024, really to 2025, we made sure we accounted for that. And where that's important is some of the cost estimates that had been used previously had a base figure that was referenced back to 2018. So we wanted to make sure that we brought those cost estimates up to reflect this bump here with the construction cost inflation, and then assumed a continuous growth factor on each of those projects out for a period of time. And if you look at that chart, at the top of the chart, it peaks out, or that new growth rate is about 4%. So we applied 4% compounded annually on the cost estimates. All right, so there's a lot here on this screen, but members of council, you should have these sheets before you. And this is a shot of the matrix itself for the projects. And it lists the area of the project, the municipal priority for the project as they defined it, the project name, description of the project, and then you get into the scoring matrix out here on the right-hand side, where it's got the public and municipal support, the congestion score, a safety score, total score, which is those three columns added together, and then an estimated cost, which includes inflation on those particular projects. So just a couple of quick notes before I turn it over to Eric so he can get into the details on it. The green shaded projects on this list are ones that reflect like what the mayor had spoke about earlier with the Maybank fourth lane being approved and Folliott Maybank projects being approved. So even though they were submitted, I didn't want to scrub anything off the list. We carried everything forward, just made sure that we reflected, hey, that's been funded or taken care of. So we shaded those in green. And then I'm going to let Eric take over from here and talk about the blue projects. Oh, excuse me, just before that. You also should have, in addition to the big project matrix, you should have two other 11 by 17 packets, and those are just for your information. One is the intersection list that Eric's going to talk about as well, and the other grouping is what we have with regards to specific requests from the municipalities that we talked about earlier on their regional priorities like Better North Bridge or Folly Road improvements or Mount Pleasant Way. We wanted to, again, not scrub anything off the list, but make sure we brought it forward and had it available for you. So with that, turn it over to Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving forward, members of council, I just want to work you around kind of the pie. We've already talked about the carryover project, the reduction there. The debt service amount, we've hit on that already. You saw the graph on inflation. Even with the second sales tax, we are constantly monitoring our cash flow expenditures with the CFO in our budget office because revenue cannot exceed our expenses, right? So this is a constant management of our cash flows as we move forward. So when we develop a 25-year plan now, looking forward, we're estimating and making assumptions on when projects would go to construction, when cash would be needed, etc. Those details become more defined as we move forward in the progress. So just wanted to level set on that. Moving into, we'll go pavement management, talk about that in a little more detail, bike ped next, and intersections, and then move into the future project. So pavement management, we've recommended $400 million, or 9%. That's approximately 16 million a year. And I want to remind you, I'm not sure how many of you remember this graph of our pavement management system and our projections over time. The bottom line is trending downward over time. Years are on your x-axis, and what we call our overall condition index, our status of our pavement network, is on the y-axis. You can see over time that bottom line is our current funding level. So at our current funding level, if no additional funding is added into our pavement management program, our pavement conditions will decline. We know that will happen. We know our pavements aren't in great condition overall, so we don't want that to happen. We don't want to move backwards in that area. You can see what we project needed per year is about 27.5 million. So 17.5 more, we're talking about 16 million is what we're recommending in this program. It approximately meets that need. In a little more definition of what we've heard from the community, some of that resolves around resiliency and some of it around rural road safety. I want to show you in the resiliency element, thought process is we would identify 2 million a year, so out of the 16, 2 million a year, total of 50 million over the life of the program, to address roads that overtop due to flooding. You can see on this graph, I know it's difficult, we've got in yellow roads based on elevation that would be overtopped on a typical king tide. Green would be your 5-year record tide. So we would address the yellow ones first, right? We would be trying to address those. Now you'll notice like downtown Charleston and the peninsula area, there's a lot of yellow down there. This program would address with layers of asphalt, a simple elevation buildup where we can tie shoulders back in. This would not be applicable to roads downtown or any roads where we have curb and gutter sections, right? We can't just build our way out in asphalt because we would be blocking the gutter system higher than the sidewalk, which creates all kinds of problems. What we would be looking at more like is on the barrier islands, Folly Beach, where roads overtop due to high tide, or Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, Causeways, Seabrook Island Road, getting out to Seabrook, Harborview Road, where it overtops getting off the connector there. So a solution being within our resurfacing program, what we already do, but build up in layers of asphalt where we can from an engineering perspective and tie those shoulders back down safely. So that would be 2 million a year or 50 million through the life of the program. So that's around resiliency. This is just a diagram from BCD-COG as well on rural road safety. This is the southern end of the county, just to give you an idea of perspective. Our current program, we do not address shoulder widening and safety issues, and we don't address primary or SC routes outside of the urban road boundary. So this would give us that opportunity to expand our pavement management system to include those SC routes, 162, 164, 165, those types of roads, and get into shoulder widening for safe, where we know there's known safety problems, where we can see the data on there's off-tracking of the road, safety issues like that. We don't address that in our current program. $2 million a year to address that, or $50 million over the life of the program within pavement management. All right, moving on to bike and pedestrian category. Recommendation is $190 million. At the top of the list is the Better North Bridge, which we heard from the city of North Charleston, being one of their top priorities in the bike ped category. That would, the remaining funding after the $90 million would go to that project, would leave $100 million over the life of the program. Our vision on this would be to work with the municipalities, work with members in the community to develop a countywide bike program, but also leverage the existing programs that the municipalities have. Those existing programs are the last mile, LCRT last mile on Rivers Avenue, where we need to make those connections, sidewalk connections, bike ped connections to transit stops on the LCRT. City of Charleston has their Safe Streets for All program underway, and Rethink Folly, that's on James Island. And of course, we've heard about Mount Pleasant Way. So, and then additionally, that would, so each of those, we would allocate $1 million a year to those programs. That would give the municipalities the flexibility to identify somewhat larger projects in the bike ped category that could be accomplished over time. So we would work with the municipality on what they would like to see accomplished and then deliver those within those existing plans. Also wrap that around the framework of a countywide plan. And when I list unincorporated here at $1 million a year, that just means outside of the 3 large municipalities. So that could address sidewalks in town of James Island, other municipalities that would be incorporated in that countywide bike and pedestrian plan, which again would tie into the existing plans with the municipalities, tie in with BCD-COG's plans as well, and kind of have an overall concept. Moving on to intersections. In the intersection category, we're recommending $125 million, approximately 3%, or roughly $5 million a year. Our approach with this is to expedite intersection projects over the first 10 years of the program. So $50 million program expedited forward so that we can get the design of these going and move them to construction as quickly as possible to show progress to the community and get relief around safety problems and relief around transportation problems. So when we vetted these and ranked these, we worked closely with SCDOT, District Traffic Engineer, Josh Johnson, on identifying known problems, because most of these are on state roads. We've mentioned that, right? So we're going to need to get permitted by SCDOT anyway. So we wanted to avoid intersections that we might get bogged down in complex issues that would delay projects. We were looking for projects that would be a quick start, a way to really get things done quickly and make an impact on the community. So I'll run through these quickly. City of North Charleston, we identified US 78 at Limehouse Lane. It's a safety problem supported by SCDOT. Ashley Phosphate Road at Cross County and Brandywine. That is was ranked number 16 on the urban safety list from DOT, so we know there's a safety issue there. There's also a split phasing issue where the two opposing left-hand turns can't work together, which delays traffic movement there. Within the city of Charleston, the Savannah Highway at Ashley Town Center Drive. This is an intersection that also has split phasing, major backups there coming off of 526 headed south, and in the morning rush hour trying to get to 526 and through moving into toward downtown Charleston and West Ashley. Next on the list is Maybank at Riverland Drive. We've coordinated extensively with the city of Charleston over time on coming up with a solution there. Significant safety problem at this intersection adjacent to the municipal golf course. We've known fatalities there. We need safety improvements there. Also, it's a traffic backup on that corridor of Maybank Highway that leads to Johns Island. In the unincorporated portion, some of these are actually in municipalities. Again, I'm using the concept that they're not in the big three. We've got Marion Point at Main Road Roundabout. That was number 10 on the rural safety list, CDOT. So high-ranking need on safety issue there. SC 162 at Salters Hill Road, number 9 on the ranking list as far as rural safety with DOT. Also supported by DOT as a practical solution and quick solution. SC 174 and 164, roundabout number 14 on the rural safety list. Door Road at Sealy Road was a citizen's request that's up outside, adjacent to Allendale Town Hall, where you have 3 intersections coming in. Roundabout projected there that would improve safety. And then finally, in McClellanville area, the Highway 45 at US 17 North, that's number 20 on the rural safety list. There's a flashing yellow light there. Lots of safety concern with vehicles traveling extremely fast through that intersection. Then finally, the town of Mount Pleasant. We have the Coleman Boulevard at Chuck Dolly listed, working with town staff. I now understand that they have some federal funding identified. So the next priority that we had for intersections in Mount Pleasant that we would suggest a substitution on is Whipple at Mathis Ferry, and that was something you heard from Mr. Morrison earlier as a need for them adjacent to Lucy Backham High School. Also on the DOT's urban safety list, and there's been some recent safety concerns with pedestrians, so we've addressed both of those items at that intersection for the same funding allocation to accomplish that project. And lastly, the largest category is our feature projects. So recommending $1.6 billion in funding for this program. And I'll run through these projects in order and speak to some of their merits. You've heard from some of the municipalities already on the merits of these projects. So within the city of North Charleston, the Rivers Avenue overpass at Durant, number 1 priority for them. Also a number 1 priority for them, Mall Drive improvements adjacent to Rivers Avenue, making that connection. Roper Hospital addition coming in there. Patriot Boulevard widening, we've worked previously and received a letter from the city on widening that road. That would be a connection from Palmetto Commerce Parkway and partnering with Dorchester County to make a connection with our new interchange at Weber Boulevard on I-26. We're seeing larger amounts of traffic exiting there, moving over towards Dorchester Road as a parallel route to Ashley Phosphate. Then finally, Stall Road improvements, looking at a roundabout at Midland Park and dual left turn lanes on Ashley Phosphate. This was a number 2 priority for them. Also, this was on SCDOT District Traffic Engineers list as 2 highly recommended projects to accomplish safety and traffic relief. City of Charleston at $300 million, we have recommended the battery extension and emphasizing the Federal Army Corps matching funds that would be used to leverage that federal dollars. Next is on Johns Island, the Maybank Highway Southern Pitchfork and roundabouts. Actually, that would be a roundabout at Cane Slash and make that connection down. We've been working in close coordination with the City of Charleston on that, with the roundabout that would tie in at Maybank Highway. Also, City of Charleston is Glen McConnell Parkway at Magwood at $100 million. This will be a project that we will partner with SCDOT on. They are working on the low-country corridor of 526, and they have planned to have an off-ramp overpass on Magwood, but they were not going to address the inbound traffic coming back to 526. And we know that is a congestion point, so we would like to address that as part of their project as well and partner with them on that. Finally, in the City of Charleston is the 17 South widening from Dobbin to Main Road at $225 million. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next one because it's a continuation of that project. 17 South widening, continuing from the Main Road all the way down to SC 162. This is the only major corridor widening project that we're recommending moving forward. The reason for that is this project has existing right-of-way identified. Already existing is there. It addresses a number of known intersection problems along that corridor at Carolina Bay Drive, at Davison Road, and at SC 162 where there's known safety problems. The bridges on the southern end of that at Wallace Creek, and I believe Rantolls Creek, the DOT already built those wide enough for 6 lanes. So we'd be recommending going from 4 lanes to 6 lanes out to 162 and addressing that on the southern end of the county where we know growth is expected on that southern end of the county. Finally, with the town of Mount Pleasant, we're recommending the Johnny Dies of Houston North Cut and Wingo Way associated projects in that area at $230 million. And then the Long Point Road, we're calling the Resiliency Project. That would address the overtopping at Boone Hall Creek and also the 2-lane section turn lanes adjacent to that. Putting all that together on a map, it looks like this with the green dots being the feature projects that we've identified. The one blue dot is the bike and pedestrian feature project, the North Bridge, and then the 10 intersections are in orange, denoted on the map. So that concludes my presentation on the staff's recommendation. I think I will turn it over to Chairman Boykin for discussions and adjustments based on staff recommendations.
Thank you, Eric. I guess we'll open up the discussion between council members. Would anybody like to heard first? Ms. Hunter.
Well, I'm not sure I'm ready to dig into all of the details, but I did want to express my appreciation to our municipal partners, all of our staff. Our consultant has been mentioned, but thank you all so much to the team that put this together. I feel like we've done a great job. Thank you. Of really approaching all that we have, consolidating it down into a very objective criteria that prioritizes needs based on safety and mobility. And so I appreciate all of those who have been a part of that process. It has been a very long and detailed and thorough and transparent process. So, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that the county has taken time and been thoughtful about this. And I would like to hear from council members who have specifics about some of the recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt, and thank you, Chairman and staff. So I want to recommend that we send this to our next council meeting, which is tomorrow, and we'll have enough time to discuss this and give us enough time to digest what we've seen here today. This is a lot. We want to get it right. So that would be my motion to move it, tomorrow.
We have a motion properly made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Wareman?
Well, on the motion, I mean, I would support that. I think, I do have some specific concerns I'd like to discuss at some point, whether that's before or after the motion. I will say that one of the conclusions of that is I think we've got a lot in front of us, and I think a little bit of time to sort things out. You know, pulling on one string here is going to move about 5 other things. So I don't know that we're going to be able to, at least in a satisfactory way, come to a sort of comprehensive view. I do think it would be helpful, though, for folks to go around the table and like get some of it out there, because I think the more we can start that process now, the further we can get. And I think that also adds to the transparency that Councilman Honeycutt was discussing. So I'll support the motion, but I don't, maybe after that we can still chat a little bit.
No one else? I certainly support it. We will be taking this up at tomorrow's finance committee meeting, and I think we can have that robust discussion there. Ms. Moody?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. I also want to join Ms. Honeycutt and thank our staff and the consultants. Easy to digest. I think the bottom line is the half cent is the only way to get there to fix these things. Primarily, they're state roads, right? And they're not going to maintain their own assets. And so for some reason, people brag with us about maintaining other people's roads, but such is life. That being said, I've got some ideas about allocations. As most of my council members know, I'm still a solid no on this. I think it's too soon. I think the whipping that got taken in '24 is still out there. I think there's a lot of issues that are still out there. I will tell you that I have some concerns for my district when I look at the pie and I see almost 50% going to things that are not roads and infrastructure. So that is greenbelt, interest, expense, bike, transit. I think folks in District 7 have a hard time stomaching that. And I'm glad to see the 50-50 split was still there. Urban land is a lot more expensive and a lot in the rural area was done in the first sales tax, so I'm happy to see that. But I just need to dig into some of these allocations a little more. Frankly, Mayor Cogswell, the performance substance policy, whatever you call it, is a problem for me. I think that number is way too large and big pie, big scheme of things. So that's just a few of my ideas, but I'll dig in more.
Anyone else? Mr. Browse?
Now that we open the discussion, again, thank the staff. It was a phenomenal job. And thank the chairman and the past chairman for getting us to this point. We've heard about the phenomenal growth that's going to happen. And since we're talking about specifics, I want to say in the strongest terms, I support the Greenbelt program. And I speak for many that live here, that we see things disappear and what we love about living here. And our first priority is to the people that are here. And I think that many years after the names of all of us in this room are forgotten, they won't know who we are, what we do in the Greenbelt. We are the most lasting thing that we do to preserve the legacy of the low country and what people love about living here. So I think they did a good job about what that is and why we need it. So I strongly support that as part of our transportation needs too, to deal with the overdevelopment and maintain the quality of life and manage things. If we don't do that, in 20 years, it's just going to get worse and worse. So as long as we're talking about specifics, I wanted to say I think that's a priority.
Mr. Sass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I again want to thank everybody for all the hard work that went into this. There was a lot of hard work went into this. 600 projects it could have been, and they had to weed through them and evaluate them and rank them, and I think they've done a heck of a job. And certainly there are things that I want to talk about more and tweak, look at maybe tweaking a couple of things, but overall I think they did a great job. It's a good starting point, and that's what this is supposed to be. This is the starting point. So we're going to have a 30-day comment period coming after this. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
So, so this is part of the process. So I appreciate that, and appreciate everybody that came here and took part in this, all the other councils and mayors and everybody, and I really appreciate everybody being interested. It's very important to our, like Mr. Kaprowski said, it's very important to our community and to the future of our community. Thank you.
Mr. Ware?
Mr. Chairman, since it seems like we're just going to have some of the substantive discussion under this motion, I'm just going to offer a few thoughts, maybe to, again, sort of move things forward in anticipation of tomorrow and in anticipation of the next, couple months here. As will come as no surprise to anyone, I think 15% for transit is way too low. I think that, we only have so many opportunities to shape the future of this region. And the idea that we would be running the same CARTA system in 2050 that we're running today, or God forbid, something that's somewhat decreased, I just cannot square that with the idea of being a good steward of this community. Particularly when we heard about the growth that's expected on the peninsula, the growth that's expected throughout the region, the fact that we're trying to address the sprawl and kind of get folks onto more alternative means of transportation. I think we need to build in some capacity, and so again, I think 25% is the right number. I was talking about 30 in September, but at the very least to 20. And where that comes from, look, we can talk about that in greater detail at some point, but I think it's got to come from somewhere. I will anticipate that I could probably find 5 people who agree with me on the first part. I don't know if I can find 5 people who agree with me on where it comes from. And so, my preference would be start with the 4% of money we just found in roads, but I'll just throw that out there for discussion. The other concern I would have, and I share with Mayor Cogswell, and I appreciate, what I think is a visionary approach. I do think we need to understand, particularly what projects and what portions of these are going to be for, say, the Haygood Avenue extension and fixing that intersection at Fishburne versus the battery extension itself. I know that was not sort of in our materials. The whole battery extension was sort of merged as one project, and I know in your letter it was not set up that way, that was split out in a way. I would also like to find a way to get the Calhoun corridor involved and get some of that for that. So I don't know that I can commit to a $300 million commitment on the battery extension. I'm not opposed to some portion of it, but I think there might be some room to do some things there. But look forward to the discussion amongst my fellow council members and with city officials as well. So just putting that out there.
Anyone else? Ms. Rika?
All right, so just to wrap it up, I'm going to echo what Mr. Sass said, which is I'm thrilled at the starting point that we have. I think my favorite part of the revised pie is the fact that we're starting with these intersections that can be done in the first 10 years. I think that's an excellent approach. I think we heard that across the board by folks that didn't support the referendum last time but want to see it this time, is that we want to see measurable progress right now. I'm concerned about the way the pie is split up because a lot of this is dedicated to roads, but it looks like, just based on the 38%, it's just 38% that's on those main featured projects. So maybe some way to inform the public a little better that there is a lot of road work involved in this. But I too share some concerns about percentages in various areas and how we get to the best approach on each of those. And so I look forward to having that discussion tomorrow and then hearing from the public. But again, I think it is a great start. Thank you. Oh, I do want to add, unlike Mr. Moody, I heard the voters 2 years ago. I think I heard loud and clear what they said, which is they didn't want what we were offering then. But there is absolutely no doubt in my mind it is the responsibility of this council to put this back before the public this year while it's a continuation of a program, as opposed to asking them in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 20 years from now to institute a new tax. And so I will be working to put out a program that we can put to the voters this year.
Mr. Brown?
Judge, I echo Councilman Honeycutt said. Wise words. None of us are Nostradamus. We can't guarantee people are going to say yes or no. But it is our responsibility collectively to put out the best thing we can. Our county's 100 miles long. Nobody's going to agree on everything perfectly and get whatever they want. But collectively, we need to put the best possible thing forward to address the needs of the people, which are really can't deny with congestion, overdevelopment, and put the best product we can. This is a great start today. I look forward to the continuing discussion tomorrow. Thank you for your leadership in this.
Anyone? I'm going to conclude on the discussion by saying two things. First, mayors, council members, thank you so very much for coming and being part of this process. Your presentations were thoughtful and informative. I want to thank our staff for doing an incredible, absolutely incredible job delivering this to us and being able to explain it and go through the details. You can't get much more transparent than that. And for all the public out there, we will be taking this up tomorrow at the Lonnie Hamilton Public Service Building at 5 o'clock p.m. You're welcome to come attend. You can watch it virtually on YouTube or on the county website. And then pending the recommendation that comes from that meeting tomorrow, it will go on to our county council meeting the following Tuesday. That meeting will be at 6:30 also at the Lonnie Hamilton Building. And at that meeting, there will be the opportunity for more public comment. So I invite y'all to come and share your thoughts with us on that day. But that should be the final decision on what county council puts forward in this initial rendering. And we're not going to fail to emphasize enough, it is just a starting point. There's no finality in it. And then you, the public, will have 30 days, and please do comment and weigh in and tell us what you think so that we know what you want in this referendum and we can try to deliver that to you. So with that, so at this time, I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? One opposed. Motion carries. Without any other further business, we will be standing adjourned. Thank you.